service discovery is a pattern. When you have an application broken down into different services, how do you have them communicate with each other? How do you have them discover whom to communicate with? Service discovery is a pattern. And you have technologies which allow for that pattern. You have Eureka as one technology which allows for the pattern. So those two work together. So you have patterns which you have to do to make microservices work. And you have these technologies which are like, hey, 100 developers working on microservices are going to run into the same problem. So let me create something that all those 100 people are going to use. So somebody created Eureka, which addresses the problem of service discovery. Does that make sense?
I don't know whether this question is right or not. So what's exactly the difference between the microservices and the web services?
That's a very good question. So I think the thing that you're talking about is service-oriented architecture, right? So service-oriented architecture, I don't know if you guys have heard about it. It was the thing in like early 2000s actually, or probably even before that. Like everybody was doing service-oriented architecture. That was like the enterprisey way of building applications. And yeah, it shares a lot of common philosophies, but the idea is in what the objective of that architecture is. When you're building service-oriented architecture, you're building a service for reusability, and you don't have a clear idea about where it's going to be used. So for instance, there is this IP Locator service. I used that for another video of mine, and that service has gone down. So people keep reminding me about that. So the IP Locator service is a service built in the service-oriented architecture. And what it does is it has endpoints using SOAP, where you make a call, give it an IP, and then it is going to return the location, right? There is a way you can do that. And it's used across the board. A lot of applications use it. And when people created that service, that IP service, did they have an application in mind? No. They were providing a utility, right? A lot of service-oriented architecture concepts are around creating that utility. They're saying, okay, I don't know where it's going to be used, so let me create the service and keep it there, and whoever wants to use it can use it, right? Microservices is not like that. In the case of microservices, you have an idea about what that application is. You are creating an application. So let's say you're building the next Amazon using microservice architecture. You know that your application is this e-commerce application. And you're breaking down that application into microservices, knowing very well that that's probably the only use of that microservice. And you're fine with it. You're not intending for it to be reused. Can it be reused? Yes. Somebody has to get the door. Sorry. It can potentially be reused. When you build something using microservices, you can potentially reuse it. But it is not a requirement. It's not designed for that. Okay, I think that's the fundamental difference. And you can read up online. There are a lot of philosophical debates and a lot of scientific literature around it. But that's the way I think about it. And it makes perfect sense. And if you look at other service-oriented architectures, that's what it's for. And service-oriented architecture had a lot of complexity involved in them. Because they wanted to scale for some future use somewhere, they wanted to make it standardized. They wanted to have a very explicit contract. SOAP is a very explicit contract. They had service buses to handle communication, because who knows, something might break in the future. So they had to take so many precautions because of that. Okay, we don't know who's going to be using it in the future. But microservices, you know very well that your shopping cart microservice is going to be called by this one other microservice in this one application. And you can relax a little bit about how strict you want the contract to be and how strict you want that architecture to be. So.
And just a follow-up question. In SOA world, the service is really a data, it delivers the data.
Mm-hmm.
It's a headless, right? There is no UI involved. UI is a separate layer. How is in microservices world?
It's the same thing.
Same thing.
Yeah.
So you just still deliver the data, and the UI is not part of it.
UI could technically be another microservice.
Oh.
Yeah, it's the microservice which consumes other microservices. So in the example that we're going to be doing, I will show you something that looks like that. We're going to be creating a couple of microservices where one of them provides the API for maybe like a JavaScript client. Okay.